Welcome, friends, here, both here and out there. And it's so good to see you. And there certainly is beauty all around us, isn't there? What a beautiful fall we've had with the leaves, and what a gift. And today I would like to give a special thanks to our choir, to the music, which adds to the beauty of today and brings it out even more. Thank you all. And I think that we're all friends here, that we all know one another. So let's start the service. And thank you to the worship committee, always. These words by Barbara J. Pesca. May the glory of the passing away of autumn lie about us fresh gold for a time. And when the dark comes and the cold, may we remember how today we stand in glory, how we walk in bounty, heaped upon earth's dark carpet, how we move knee-deep in abundance, flung against night's winter curtain. We are thankful for its coming and for its passing. Let it be. We now have the pleasure of offering for you a song with a familiar tune and words by our very own Marion Whitcomb Stearns. Look at the hillside.
So are you Hi, this is a reading by Mary Oliver, a poem by Mary Oliver. Song for Autumn. In the deep fall, don't you imagine the leaves think how comfortable it will be to touch the earth instead of the nothingness of air and the endless freshets of wind? And don't you think the trees themselves, especially those with mossy, warm caves, begin to think of the birds that will come, 6, a dozen, to sleep inside their bodies? And don't you hear the goldenrod whispering goodbye, the everlasting being crowned with the first tuffets of snow? The pond vanishes, and the white field over which the fox runs so quickly brings out its blue shadows, and the wind pumps its bellows. And at evening, especially, the piled firewood shifts a little, longing to be on its way. And I think that Anne Marie has a story for us.
Good morning, everybody. So I'd like to tell you a story today. I've called it Changes. Many of you know my oldest daughter, Rosaline, as an activist for social justice. Some of you know her as a mother, a teacher, a friend. I'm proud and delighted to know her in all these ways. And today I'd like to share a story from when Rosaline was a young child and already capable of affecting change, positive change, in her home and in her community. This story takes place during a holiday weekend. Our family celebrated, as many others near and far, by sharing a large meal with many of our traditional favorites, lots of squashes and pumpkin and beans and sweet potatoes and apple pies and berry pies. And of course, because of that, we had lots of leftovers for our traditional dishes. And it was our custom to package these leftovers up into meals and send some home with our family and friends. And at that time, this is in the late 80s, the way my method was of packaging up these meals to go was to put them on paper plates, coated paper plates, and then slide the full plate inside one of those Ziploc plastic bags. And little beknownst to me, that night, that particular holiday weekend, I was being keenly observed by Rosaline. So when I came down the next morning, I was met with a huge surprise in my kitchen. Rosaline had strung reusable containers all around the kitchen. So these, like these, you know, we all have these. They've been around a long time, and so they will be, it seems. Well, she had retrieved lots of lids and lots of bases from the recycling bin in the barn. And she used string and clothespins and hung them in a marvelous web throughout the entire kitchen. The counters and the table were also covered with metal and pottery bowls. I had plenty of them. And there was a banner across the windows behind the table that said, "It's time for a change." So Rosaline had made her point. It's not enough to say that we love the world and that we appreciate its bounty and its beauty and all its living beings. My daughter reminded me that day of my responsibility to life beyond my home and life beyond my life. This one small change toward using reusables has affected many, many changes in my life, in my home, in my community, where I shop, how I put food away, how I teach all of my young ones coming along to take care of things and use reusables. So I'm very, very grateful for my activist daughter who woke me up that day to a very important fact of life, about life. And I'm also very thankful to all of you for teaching me lots more about changes, positive changes. Thank you so much. And I would like to mention now that Sharon will be will introduce our next song. Thank you, Sharon.
Our next song will play during our offering. So now is the time that we will collect for the ongoing work of this congregation, food if you have brought it. And we get to listen to How Can I Keep from Singing?
I just want to mention before I start this slideshow that all of these slides were taken in the same place on different days by a dear friend of mine. So it's really about the changing seasons, and just pay attention to what you're seeing and you'll see a year go by.
My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the reel of far-off hymn that hails a new creation. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost home, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the far-off hymn that hails the new creation. No storm can shake my soul, whilst to that rock I'm clinging. It says an hour with my soul. How can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing?
Good morning. We are going to do a responsive reading, and let's see, do folks here have the book? No? Oh, words are up. Great, good. Okay, I will lead and you can respond. Well, I don't even need my book. On turning. Now is the time for turning.
These are the hymns
to turn from green to red. The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more toward the south. For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits.
It means admitting that we have been wrong, and this is never easy.
It means losing face. It means starting all over again. And this is always painful.
It means saying, I'm sorry.
It means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are hard to do.
Unless you turn, you will be trapped forever.
God, help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith.
Turn us around, God, and bring us back toward you.
Revive our lives as at the beginning.
And turn us toward each other, God. For in isolation, there is no light.
Our theme for the day and the year, in a way. So we will move on now to a song, To Everything There Is a Season.
To everything there is a season, there is a time for all these things, a time to plant and a time to reap, a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. To everything there is a season, there is a time for all these things. A time to follow, a time to lead, a time to speak and a time to lead, a time to sleep and a time to wake, a time to give and a time to take. Through all our days and all our ways, we walk in hope that we might gain the time to live and the time to share, the time to love and the time to care.
And will Julaine put up the affirmation? And will you join me in saying our affirmation? Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve the needs of all beings, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with the source of our being. Thank you.
Well, we have a good amount of time left, which is great because last week we had a special speaker, which was wonderful. But we didn't have any time for an open discussion, which is one of the things that we were hoping to have at most of our services, because there's a lot to discuss. A lot of, when we talk about our theme for today and for the year, change, the theme of creating Earth community, which of course is going to involve a lot of change. What is that saying? The only constant in life is change. So here we are. This past week, I had the good fortune to connect with Larry Shirk, actually a couple of times, but and in the process, he gave me a talk that's printed out that was done by David Corton, who wrote the book, The Great Turning, which how many of you here have read, where most of us are, at least have heard of it, where he talks about our need to change so much of what's going on in our world today if we expect to survive as a species, and never mind the world beyond us. In this particular talk he gave on 2006, June 14th, 2006, David Corton delivered this presentation to a gathering hosted by the Unitarian Church of All Souls in New York City. And it's a great, I was thrilled to read it, and I think it will eventually lead me to reading the book. I really want to find time to read the book. One of the things that struck me, which is something that we all know, but I felt it might be worth describing what he called an earlier turning. You know, how we nosedived into where we are today, and as a way to help us get back to, and I say back and forward, to something which could work much better. So I just want to describe how he talks about the earlier turning. Our problem began with an earlier turning. Cultural historian Rianne Eisler observes that for hundreds of thousands of years before the onset of empire, humans evolved within a culture and institutional frame of Earth community, expressed in symbolic representation by the Stonehenge circle of life. They organized not to dominate life, but to celebrate it. Then, some 5,000 years ago, our ancestors made a tragic turn from the partnership to domination, symbolized by the Egyptian pyramids of power. The earliest human societies worshiped the goddess, balanced feminine and masculine energies, placed women in significant leadership roles, and were generally peaceful and egalitarian. As population density grew, however, humans faced the challenge of organizing social relationships beyond an immediate circle of one's own kin, and the first great turning began. Female gods were replaced by male gods as the masculine drove out the feminine, and men took over to rule by bow and sword in a brutal competition for power that created a relentless play or die, rule or be ruled dynamic of violence and oppression. Conquest became a measure of greatness. The wisdom of the elders and the priestess gave way to the arbitrary rule of powerful kings. We humans lost our sense of attachment to Earth. Our societies became divided between the rulers and the ruled. It began some 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, the land we now call Iraq. Empire has come full circle, as this is the land in which the most powerful, and hopefully the last, empire appears destined to exhaust itself. It is no coincidence that every empire in human history has been built on a foundation of slavery and bonded labor. It is axiomatic. For a few to be on top, the many must be on the bottom, and it remains so in our time. Sweatshop and migrant agricultural workers are one example of modern equivalence. So I thought, we know this picture, but it was nice, good to review that description and how it is carried on today. I love this sentence, how since that fateful turn away from Earth community, imperial institutions have systematically reduced the vast majority of humans to conditions of servitude that deny their humanity, suppress their creative potential. I think that's really important. While elevating to the highest positions of power, the most power-driven and ethically challenged among us. I mean, how often does that happen, that people in power are the most ethically challenged among us? Not always, but how often does it happen? So, that is, you know, a picture of what we are trying to, the empire that we are trying to move ourselves away from and return to, or move toward a new kind of Earth community. And of course, the challenges to do this are manifold. And we need all of our efforts, energy, and intelligence to figure out how to make this happen. And we have plenty of time this morning. I'd love to now open this up for discussion and ideas to how we move forward in that direction. And of course, including folks zooming in and here. As far as I'm wondering the best way, if it is better for people to come up front who are here, or at least be in camera view. And then those who are zooming, somebody can zoom in on them, right? Thank you, Marie. Okay. Great. So anyone want to start? Good, Dick.
Where do you want me to stand?
Here would be great.
I think, yeah.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay. The book you're talking about, was that called The Great Turning?
Yes, from empire to earth.
Oh,
community.
okay. I haven't read the book. So I'm somewhat at a disadvantage. But there's another book out recently called The Dawn of Everything by two authors whose names unfortunately escape me right now, which recounts a great deal of recent archaeological research, which pretty well establishes that the story that you just outlined is not true. That there were cultures that you could consider to be empire, characterized by the empire description going back much farther than 5,000 years, 10 or 12,000 years at least. And there similarly have been cultures that you might call earth-centered far more recently. And the central theme of that book, as I understand it, is actually fairly hopeful, because it says basically that people always have had the ability to choose what kind of social organization they want. And that means, of course, that people can choose anew. But in fact, the story that we were largely hunters and gatherers and various other earth-centered cultures, and then there was a big turn that forced everything to change, is really far more simplistic than reality indicates.
Okay, good.
I'd like to share something that I read in 1990 that changed my whole life, and it was Daniel Quinn's book. It was Daniel Quinn's book called Ishma, I don't know if any of you have read that book.
Ishmael.
Ishmael. And it's a very powerful book. It's a fiction, actually. And it's about a talking gorilla that that challenges us to change the world. And Ishmael's view of the world is that there are levers and takers. In our society, basically, is a taking society, and we're not giving. What we have to learn now is to give back to the earth rather than take. And I think that's an important lesson. And I think there are a lot of publications now coming out, and I think that's very encouraging that there is awareness out there. In Braiding Sweetgrass is a wonderful book, and I would highly recommend that. And I know it's been recommended to us all here. And I love that. And the scientific and the poetic are related in that book, and it's very powerful. And I just love her. I forget what the author's name is, but she's an Indigenous person, and I think that we are looking to Indigenous cultures now who have survived all these ages for their wisdom, and I think that's an encouraging thing. Thank you.
That book, The Great Turning, is a little daunting for a lot of people. It's hard to get started, especially when there's a vague promise of upset or confusion. So I would recommend a way to start is to Google The Great Turning Study Guide. You'll find there all kinds of nice things, including the reference that Hallie made to his presentation to the Unitarian Church of All Souls in New York City. So the recommended Google is The Great Turning Study Guide.
I had something that this made me think about. Oh, thank you for spotlighting me. Hi, everybody. Welcome to my kitchen. I think one of the really, really important things we need to do is something that we've talked about before when we were talking about our grandmother's hands, my grandmother's hands, and trauma, and that we need to look at trauma, generational trauma, current trauma, and we need to heal it. We need to stop the trauma now, and then create situations where people are safe enough to do the work they need to do to heal. Because right now that's not happening. And that's just a big, big thing that is perpetuating these power over relationships that seem to dominate right now. So building safety in the world and standing up and speaking out and not being silent. Thank you. Auntie's nodding. Yes.
Yeah, that's huge. That just topic, I think, on its own is a huge part of this, and part of our turning around on how we treat each other and how we treat Earth, and absolutely important.
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody, sorry, I just want to add one more thing. Somebody once asked me, well, what is ecofeminism? You know, and I said, well, you know, basically it's the understanding that we rape women, and we rape the earth, and it's part and parcel of the same thing. We extract, like you just said.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to thank Dick for bringing up, you know, that this, what I just read about, it isn't that black and white, you know, it's much more interwoven. Not that, and that we even today have societies that are much more earth-centered and an earth community and so on, that they do exist today. And we're trying to weave these things more into our own society. So yeah, it's not black and white about this happened at this time, but I think that the main thing to get is just the idea of people who are, you know, what I want to say, what he described as the earlier turning, what we fell into. Okay, when that happened or how it happened, and this probably was going on, you know, as long as we've been around in some way or other here and there. But it just points out, I think, in general, what we need to be working on and what we want to move away from and what we want to move toward. And how we do that. There's we have time here, and there's Larry said this is a 3-minute read, which I thought was also very good. He gave this to me yesterday. So I think I will, unless anyone else.
I just want to say,
Sure.
the worship committee did a service on this topic last year. And it's so rich. And so, to me, the most important thing we can be talking about and addressing. So we chose it for the theme for the year. Well, I read the whole book. It's underlined and starred and, you know, annotated. And I pledged to get a couple of copies that we'll leave on the harvest table so people can go ahead and read it. David Corton does a long talk, or a long part of the book, about the history of empire, which is important to read. And, you know, we know the history, but through this lens, and then talking about, okay, what do we do about it, and creating earth community. So it's good to have the balance of both, so we know what it is we're trying to change. We decided to focus on the creating earth community part, so we can be inspired, we can inspire each other and find strategies to change. But a phrase that we have used in talking about this is stop and turn around. It's an image of stopping what we're doing and examining it and perhaps changing. So that's my piece.
I would just like to ask a question. If we were to give back to the earth, how would we go about that? What would we do? What should we do? Maybe putting fertilizer into the earth.
What kind of fertilizer?
What kind of fertilizer?
Not chemical.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. If anybody has any ideas how to give to the earth rather than take, what can we do?
Yeah.
They used to offer sacrifices. Some of the ancient cultures, they offered sacrifices to the moon and to the sun. Some of them were or human sacrifices. I don't recommend that right now, but I was wondering if anybody had ideas.
And,
about that.
and this is Tina. This is Tina. And Anne just wrote on the chat to make fractals. And I don't remember what the exact phrase said, what thing that she said, but make fractals.
Make fractals that show Earth's magic.
Yes,
Oh, fractals.
Tony,
Earth's magic.
Yes.
Tony.
Yes, I totally agree, because when you're making them, you are communicating in a special way. You are appreciating what's in front of you in a very personal way. And the earth becomes, it's a way of the earth communicating to you personally. And it's very meditative. It's back and forth, you know. I think, thank you for saying.
Well, it's just magic. It's magic.
It
Yeah.
really is.
It shows you what is already there in a different.
Yeah,
It's right in front of you and how precious it is.
yeah.
Thank you.
This is Tina still. I wanted to just make a suggestion that people are giving lots of good resources, and we need to have a way of collecting them so that people can access them, access the information. And we have sometimes done it on the chat, but not everybody gets the chat, or not everybody gets to keep the chat. And so maybe June, and we can talk about having a place on the website that people can input their resources. And any ideas about that?
That's good.
Well,
Okay,
so I'd like to add something today
yay.
to the discussion. I always like to think about, or take a look at like what is happening, and it answers some of what, your question was today, Tony, a very good one. Like, how can we give back, and how can we do this? And I gave that one little story today about Rosaline, but I think the other point was happening for me in that is we learn so much from each other. And when we share these ideas, like, thank you for the references today, for those who spoke. And from our young people, I have certainly learned so much about how to take care or honor the earth, or fertilize our positive thoughts and actions, if you will. My daughter T, who many of you know, that's my middle daughter. She is part of this, it's called Earth Community Village. And that's a group of folks from actually all around the world. But the base is there in Vermont, believe it or not. And they get together, those who can, on the full moon every month. They've been doing this for years. And in that gathering, in that circle, they sing songs and they say prayers, and they remind each other of the beauty of all living things and our responsibility to each other and to the earth. And they send out like messages of hope. That's the biggest thing for me, is telling stories and sending messages of hope. And they do it in so many different ways. So that's just one tiny little thing. But if we also take a look at some of the ideas about even the term Earth community, if you Google that, you'll find that is going on. People are doing this very consciously all around the world. Joanna Macy and David Corton, they started this thing decades ago, really. And there's so many people that are getting on board. So I just want to leave that message there that it's happening, it is happening. And I'm so excited that this community is talking about it and sharing about it. Okay, thank you, Hallie.
Sure, great, thank you. I'm a very mundane way, and you could expect this coming out of my mouth, about how we could return to Earth. Zero waste. anything that goes in the trash is dissing, Mother Earth can't take care of it. It's going to, wherever. And things that anything that we can compost or recycle, etc., that is returning to Earth. So our goal, one of the goals we need is zero waste. And of course, to get there, we have to be using all materials that the Earth can reabsorb. So moving away from plastic is a number one. And one of the things I hope to do is get a petition going to at least get signatures to encourage the food co-op, for instance, to use much less plastic. In France, they've made a law where you cannot use plastic around fresh produce. Well, that's a start. So, and of course, our own bodies, that to me is one of the ultimate gifts. I've been taking so much from Earth all my life. I at least would like to return my body in a way that can be useful to Earth. And there are ways to do that now. So yeah, good, lots of good points, and thank you, everybody. I think we've covered a good amount of ground this morning. I'm glad we had the time to do this.
Tina Feindel and I will now have for you a reading, The Peace of Autumn by Rabindranath Tagore. Today, the peace of autumn pervades the world.
In the radiant noon, silent and motionless, the wide stillness rests like a tired bird.
Spreading over the deserted fields to all horizons, its wings of golden green.
Today, the thin thread of the river flows without song, leaving no mark on its sandy banks.
The many distant villages bask in the sun with eyes closed in idle and languid slumber.
In the stillness, I hear in every blade of grass,
in every speck of dust, in every part of my own body, in the visible and invisible worlds.
in the planets, the sun and the stars, the joyous dance of the atoms through endless time.
We have another song that we invite you to get up. Ellen will pass out percussion instruments here. And those of you at home, if you have a rattle or something, you can shake or clap your hands and sing along to Let It Be a Dance We Do.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let the dancing song be heard. Let the music say the word and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to be, feel the rhythm, feel the beat, to reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and sing. Everybody learns to bend, and like the willow in the wind. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter and the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance with you. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance.
I want to take a moment here. This is Anne Marie speaking, and I want to thank the virtual choir for this service today. And I also want to thank the magic that you all make together. I can hear your individual voices. Thank you, Julaine, for synthesizing and the beautiful photographs and slideshows. Thank you so much, choir. Mwah. I have a reading for you today, our closing reading. And this comes from the poet, John O'Donohue, in his book, The Barefoot Guide, Whole Landscapes, Whole Communities. It is called In Praise of the Earth. Let us thank the earth that offers ground for home and holds our feet firm to walk in space open to infinite galaxies. Let us salute the silence and certainty of mountains, their sublime stillness, their dream-filled hearts. The wonder of a garden, trusting that first warmth of spring until its black infinity of cells becomes charged with dream. Then the silent, slow nurture of the seed's self, coaxing it to trust the act of death. The humility of the earth that transfigures all that has fallen, of outlived growth, the kindness of the earth, opening to receive our worn forms into the final stillness. Let us ask forgiveness of the earth for all our sins against her, for our violence and our poisonings of her beauty. Let us remember within us the ancient clay, holding the memory of seasons, the passion of the wind, the fluency of water, the warmth of fire, the quiver touch of the sun, and shadowed sureness of the moon, that we may awaken to live in the full, the dream of the earth, who chose us to emerge and incarnate its hidden night in mind and spirit and light. Blessed be. The chalice and the bell.